Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Dover-Sherborn. Can you all mute, please? Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee for Monday, February 1st, 2021. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. Information on how to join remote school committee meetings and meeting agendas are posted on the Dover-Sherborn website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and please be aware that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Okay, so we have one agenda item. It is my first time leading this process, so it's a bit complicated, so please bear with me. I'm just going to do my best. As you know by now, Dr. Keogh last fall announced his retirement in June 2021. After that announcement, a superintendent search team was put together, chaired by Ann Hovey, which included a screening process undertaken by administrators, educators, school committee members, and community members. The screening committee brought forward 4 candidates for the school committee to interview. The last 2 Wednesdays, 3 of these candidates came to campus and met with various stakeholders. Members watched parent Zooms, received feedback via feedback forms, references were contacted directly, both provided and sought out. Tonight, we are going to talk about the next steps in the process. But before we get started, there's some ground rules we should go over. In fairness to the 3 candidates, please always be sensitive to our finalists' reputations in our discussions. When the time comes, if you support a particular candidate, or perhaps more than one, please speak up. This is not a zero-sum game, so if you speak positively about an attribute of one candidate, it doesn't mean that the other candidates don't possess that attribute. And we're not going to refute supportive comments with a counter. Please try to base comments on evidence found in feedback forms and references and publicly accessible information, etc., that relate to the candidate profile that we developed. Okay, tonight we are making a decision about next steps with NESDEC, our search company. There are 3 possible outcomes from this meeting. 1, we move forward to enter into contract negotiations with the candidate. 2, we decide that we need more information on 1 or more candidates. And 3, we don't move forward with any of the candidates and continue the search at a later time. So I'm going to open for discussion. And I want to just remind those that are watching that due to open meeting law, this is the first time that this committee has been able to deliberate together. So we're here tonight to start having that conversation. Okay, so I think the first order to do is just a hand raise. So it's not a vote, it's just a hand raise if whether folks feel like they have enough information or readiness to make a decision tonight. Oh, I guess I'm part of that. Okay. Oh, sorry, keep them up. I guess I really have to pay.
I can do that. I need to ask a question.
Yes.
I don't mean to be snotty and technical, but if the people who vote eventually to select a candidate are those who are on Union 50, and again, I know that we want everything to be, I know we're going to try and reach a consensus. I'm hoping we're going to try and reach a consensus, but should that play in terms of votes that we take? Should that be a factor?
We're not at a period of voting at this particular time. We're just going to start.
Then why are we raising our hands?
Just
I'm not arguing with you, Brooke. I'm confused. I don't understand why we're doing this.
Anne, did you want to comment?
I just thought I'd help that in a normal meeting, it would just sort of be like a nodding of heads, kind of, it's a sense of the committee. We're trying to gather a sense of the committee. It's just, it's hard to kind of figure out how to do that when you're little boxes. So normally we would not be raising hands because it's not supposed to be something you can, it's not supposed to be like a count, like a recorded count. It's a sense of the committee. Does that make sense?
So it's an informal straw poll.
Yes, you could call it that.
Yeah, informal.
I'm sorry, and I'm driving everyone crazy, I'll admit it. But if it's a straw poll, then there's that Union 50 question. And you can say thanks, Judy, and then move on.
Well, my
Go
feeling
ahead.
as one of 15 is that because enough folks felt like they had information or readiness to make decisions, that then we would, and I would like to include everybody in that, then they would go forward and talk in support of specific candidates at this time. So I don't know why I don't think I need to leave that just to Union 50. I'd like to hear what everybody has to say.
I'm not suggesting that we not hear what everyone has to say. I just don't, you know what, I'm going to withdraw that and let you go on with the process.
Okay.
I'm just really surprised about that.
All right.
Question.
Well, it's the first time I've done it, Judy, so I'm trying my best.
Me too.
Okay.
I'll just, I
Yeah.
think that there is precedent for the two searches ago that I observed, the past search that I was a part of, the technicality around Union 50 and region, I think, was really more around what was ultimately logged. My recollection is everybody participated, everybody voted, but the actual logged votes were those of Union 50 in the region.
But this isn't a vote. This is an indication. So that,
I agree with you, Brooke, that that's part of the reason why we're not voting. And technically, Union 50 and the RSC vote, Union 50 only exists in the actual superintendent vote. So it doesn't really exist in this part of the process.
okay. I propose that we open up for committee members to raise their hand in order to speak in support of candidate at this time, and to please give specific evidence when you do so. This should be based on the candidate profile. Anne.
Thank you. I've written it down because when I get nervous, I babble too much. All right. To say that conducting a search during a pandemic has been challenging would be an understatement. Under normal circumstances, we would all have met the finalists in person. Some of you would have had lunch or shared a car ride with them. And perhaps a group of us would be preparing to do site visits. That clearly could not happen this year. I know of other superintendent searches that have been conducted entirely remotely. So I thought a hybrid approach would be a way to balance the needs of our community with the comfort level of the Board of Health and given state restrictions. Unfortunately, my team and I underestimated the importance of face-to-face interaction with members of the community. So it made sense to me to try to rectify the situation. And these are unprecedented times, so sometimes things need to be done differently. Some people may not agree, but I believe in granting some grace and trying to make things right. So, early in this process, we, the members of the superintendent search team at the behest of the joint school committees, set out to create a candidate profile. With the help of NESDEC, we held 14 focus groups across all constituents, invited everyone in the DS community to complete a survey, and spoke with a dozen key stakeholders directly. The search team poured over 58 pages of data from over 200 people to create a summary that reflected what the community said are the most important qualities and skill sets in our next superintendent. In a workshop setting, the members of the Joint School Committee went through the draft candidate profile line by line, and then voted to accept the final document as the central document by which we would determine the best candidate to lead our districts. I wanted to review the process of creating the candidate profile because it is the document, the one that the community helped create and the SC voted to accept, that I'm using to support the candidacy of Dr. Aurelia Enriquez. So the candidate profile starts with: the successful candidate will establish evidence of experience and expertise in the following ways: through collaborative leadership, systemic equity, exemplary communication, and whole child education. Dr. Enriquez served as superintendent of a complex district for 3 years and had her contract extended prior to her departure. She'd served as assistant superintendent for elementary education and human resources for the Brentwood district for 10 years, in addition to a number of years as a principal, an adjunct college professor, and a classroom teacher. Under the heading of collaborative leadership, first we have the first bullet point was problem solves and builds consensus while valuing disparate viewpoints and perspectives. The head of the Brentwood Teachers Union, Kevin Coyne, described her leadership style as quote, collaborative in nature. Demonstrates wisdom and courage when dealing with conflict and when making tough decisions. Mr. Coyne continued as he shared a story that Dr. Enriquez elaborated on of when the local Board of Education claimed a pre-K program was too costly, and how Dr. Enriquez stood up to the school board and used facts to describe how to quote, debunk the inaccurate narrative because she knew keeping the program was what was best for the students. And she was in fact able to keep that program. Sorry. Effectively brings people together to achieve a plan and create change over time. After meeting with Dr. Enriquez in person, a DS administrator shared, quote, in discussing her role as superintendent, she stressed the importance of using data and the strategic plan to drive decision-making, as well as frequent communication with the larger community. A future-focused leader who earns community confidence and respect. Superintendent Bond shared Dr. Enriquez had, quote, a deep well of relationships and a good understanding of, quote, when to pull and when to push. Under systemic equity, we have works on behalf of marginalized populations. Dr. Enriquez created a program called Young Men on the Rise as a way to address the data she collected and analyzed that showed boys being raised by single mothers were consistently underachieving. Lori Kerner, Executive Director of Curriculum and Professional Development in the Riverhead District, stated Dr. Enriquez's main goal is to make sure that all children have equitable opportunities and that all children, regardless of their identity, in her example, LGBTQ, have what they need to succeed. Steadfastly addresses issues of systemic racism and bias. A DS administrator commented, quote, she has focused a lot of work on the achievement gap, connectedness, and equity. Another DS administrator said, quote, her lifelong work has been around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she was well-versed in DS's efforts in this area. She did her homework. Her core values seemed to match those of the district and show signs that she was already picking up on aspects of our climate and culture. Another bullet point under systemic equity is committed to social justice and providing a culturally responsive education. After meeting with Dr. Enriquez last Wednesday, teacher and Sherborn resident Kelly Hodge, who shared that she's a member of the DS Aid Coalition, stated, quote, she answered our questions thoughtfully and thoroughly and would be able to lead us in our journey toward change. She has the intelligence, experience, and knowledge to handle this position. We also have exemplary communication. The bullet point under that is communicates directly, clearly, and frequently with all constituents using a variety of media. Superintendent Bond shared that she, quote, writes well, speaks well, and presents well. And both at Riverhead and the Brentwood District, she created video highlights of student, teacher, and district-wide achievements that you have access to and that Maggie shared links to some of. Hears and builds trust with all constituencies. Elizabeth Silva, a Riverhead School Board member, shared Dr. Enriquez worked, quote, to bring all the stakeholders to a consensus by meeting with teachers, parents, etc., to work together to improve the district. Dr. Enriquez was always approachable and communicated well via phone and email and often met with the most difficult stakeholders in person. A top priority for Dr. Enriquez was to bring everyone together. Whole child education. Bullet point under that is maintains focus on quality and high standards for academic achievement, resilience, social and emotional growth, and mental health for all students. Lori Kerner shared that Dr. Enriquez, quote, champion an emphasis on social and emotional skills for all students, not just for those who have mandated services. Facilitates high quality professional development to support teachers meeting diverse student needs. Superintendent Hines from Port Washington School District said, quote, she understands that the needs of students vary greatly and that the kids in the middle are often lost. She's focused on being sure that no kids are lost. Champions a whole child perspective for all students that supports lifelong learners. The parent in the feedback form shared she felt Dr. Enriquez was, quote, student-centered, empathetic, experienced, thoughtful, focused on diversity and inclusive. And Superintendent Bond shared that Dr. Enriquez, quote, always did the right thing for kids without fail. As an educator, a parent, a community member, and a school committee member, that's what I want from our superintendent of schools. And from what I can tell based on the candidate profile, that's what the community wants as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for going through some of the process as well that I forgot to do that. So that was very helpful. Thank you. Who's next? Maggie? Maggie got there first.
It's okay. I can wait. Okay.
No, go ahead, because then I'll,
Okay.
because you probably will say stuff that
Okay. I also wrote things down because I talk too much. So that will be no surprise to many of you on this call. So first of all, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to extend my thanks to the members of the Superintendent Search Team for their diligence in vetting resumes, interviewing candidates, and sending us this dynamic slate of finalists. Second, I would like to thank my school committee colleagues, as well as all of you who have participated in the feedback process as candidates completed their public interviews and visited our communities. Your feedback was heartfelt, thoughtful, and varied. At this time, I recommend continuing our process with fidelity. We are still awaiting reference calls on at least one candidate, and I would like to request writing samples from the finalists. It seems important to take our time and use the protocols put in place to ensure we make a measured, fully informed decision. In the meantime, we're each charged with synthesizing the information gathered thus far. To that end, tonight, I wish to speak in support of hiring Dr. Aurelia Enriquez as our next superintendent of schools. Why Dr. Enriquez? While I saw wonderful strengths in each candidate, Dr. Enriquez is the only candidate with superintendent experience, not to mention a long track record of success as a building administrator, district administrator, and experienced classroom teacher. These were all considerations that were important to members of our community as we had our discussions leading up to this search. Her experience ensures a deep and thorough understanding of a district's leadership and administrative needs. More importantly, though, her character and vision seem to be what Dover-Sherborn says we're looking for in our next leader. Her vision of inclusive excellence is aligned with We Are DS and with the climate of care that has been so carefully nurtured over the past 4 years. In addition, keeping the focus on student excellence, a value we all share. While we all know that she is unable to share many details about her experience in Riverhead, others in that community attest to the good work she did in her years there. In reference calls, folks who worked with her while she was superintendent described her as, quote, kind, warm, and an active listener. As a person who, quote, maintained grace under pressure and who wanted to hear the voices of all whom she served, including her critics. Both board member and colleague describe her as a passionate advocate for each child's success. My personal review of Riverhead social media over the past 4 years show many of the dynamic things occurring in the school community over the years of Dr. Enriquez's leadership. A strong sense of school spirit, school kindness challenges, theater productions of Disney movies, sports teams competing, choirs performing at Radio City Music Hall, students participating in STEM programs in conjunction with a local college, and a mentoring program that Dr. Enriquez spearheaded that brought community members into the classroom, as we've discussed, to help boys who needed a role model. Monthly district newsletters cheerfully signed Dr. H, reference district goals, and highlight classrooms and teachers who are working to bring these goals to life. Evidence of Dr. Enriquez's hands-on approach is there too, as the community faced challenges due to a budget formula that penalized towns with growing populations. Dr. Enriquez spearheaded community activism to advocate for the school's needs, even taking and organizing a bus trip with community members to Albany to make their case to the state. This is a leader whose actions speak louder than words. Conversations with folks who she worked with in Brentwood for over 20 years, demonstrated dedication to her district, as well as a track record of building relationships through hard work, careful listening, and clear communication. Multiple references describe her as humble, a leader who has a let's get this done together attitude, and a willingness to, quote, roll up her sleeves to attack a problem in a collaborative way. This is the kind of leader that Dover-Sherborn needs. She has earned the respect of that local union president for her willingness to collaborate to solve problems, and because he says she is the kind of person whose goal it is to help teachers, quote, become everything they're supposed to be and more. When asked about how she handles situations of conflict, she was described as a seeker of the truth, and references confirmed that process, which she demonstrated in interviews for getting to the true root of issues before taking a stand. Our next strategic plan must build on the progress of the last 4 years, continuing our commitment to We Are DS and its culture of care, but also carefully examining the best instructional practices for ensuring our students' future success, as well as addressing issues of systemic racism and bias. This is difficult work. It calls for a brave, collaborative leader, a leader like Dr. Enriquez. My own interactions with Dr. Enriquez last Wednesday confirmed that her colleagues, supervisors, and local board members were not exaggerating about her humbleness or her warm kindness. As her host for part of her morning visit to our schools, I found her easy to talk with, self-deprecating, and with a sense of humor. Most of all, her thoughtful questions and observations as we moved from location to location showed me that she was genuinely curious to learn about our community and to meet our people. One administrator from DS who met her described her as smart and experienced. Another commented that her, quote, laser-like student-centered focus was the attribute they most recalled from their time. Another remarked her, quote, energy and positive mindset was refreshing. And then another member of the DS leadership team added that Dr. Enriquez would be a valuable mentor for them as they grew as a leader. Students also had interesting things to say about Dr. Enriquez. Quote, I appreciated how much Dr. Enriquez clearly cares about students' social emotional well-being, in addition to the importance of academic success. Dr. Enriquez also voiced how much she values student input and how she actively addresses issues we bring up, including citing multiple specific examples of this action. This made me feel like she's approachable and will take student input to heart, end quote. Another said, quote, I think she's prepared to make the kind of positive changes we need at DS. She seems to value the opinions of all the students. She seems like she really cares about the issues students have. Overall, I think she'd be a great voice to have in our district. She'd be my top choice, end quote. Multiple faculty members and parents noted her compassionate stance, and one stated, this candidate understands our mission, is willing to get to know our community and provide necessary leadership. She understands the role of the teacher, the administrator, and how to bridge the gaps between all members of the Dover-Sherborn community. I was very impressed with Aurelia, and I feel she'd be a good addition to the district if selected, end quote. Another noted, she is smart and talented and brings a fresh and strong perspective. She clearly has the political savvy to hold her own in our community, but would also add value and push us to be even better. There are many ways that we might choose to proceed tonight, but I'll end with this. Finding a dedicated, kind, thoughtful, and student-centered leader who will help us move the district to its greatest potential is not an easy task. It is my belief that we have found such a person in Dr. Aurelia Enriquez, and I hope that we will make the most of the fortunate opportunity we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. You're up next.
Thank you. So, okay, I didn't write out my comments, but luckily, Anne and Maggie pretty much said everything I wanted to say. I also support Dr. Enriquez. And I want to tell you that it's been a journey for me. When I spoke to Anne, probably in October, maybe September, October, somewhere around there, about conducting the search at all and how we were going to do it in the midst of a pandemic. And I said to Anne, you know, I've spent my legal career interviewing people. I spend hours and hours every day, every week, interviewing people to try and get to the truth and figure out what's really going on. I said, I've done it via Zoom, I've done it in person. It's really tough, nearly impossible to do via Zoom. And there is something about doing it in person that makes you be able to get better and more information and see the individual more clearly. We went forward because it's important. The work that we're doing is really important. It's important for the district. And I support that wholeheartedly. But my journey in this process has been that I watched the Zoom calls and had many questions about all of the candidates. And so I volunteered to host, and I got to speak to each candidate in person. I also called references for Dr. Enriquez, and I also spoke with many of our marvelous building leaders about each of the candidates. My conclusion is that Dr. Enriquez would be an excellent choice for us, for all of the reasons that Anne and Maggie said. And because I actually got to sit in a car with her and talk to her. And you learn a lot about someone's character. And I think her character is terrific and her experience is terrific. And she would be an asset to everyone here. So thank you.
Who's next? Michael?
Thanks, Brooke. First, I want to say that I'm very grateful to each of the finalists for participating in our COVID modified process. I found each finalist to be lovely individuals and very passionate about what they do. Based on all the information that I've been able to take in, interviews, community Zooms, feedback forms, reference calls, one-on-one discussions with many people who interacted with the finalists in person and individually, I am not confident that any of the finalists would be a successful superintendent at Dover-Sherborn consistent with the candidate profile. I was one of the few present members of our school committees who was incumbent during our last superintendent search. During that search, the excitement regarding each of the three finalists was palpable. It was very strong. And the dilemma that we faced wasn't whether any of the finalists would be successful at Dover-Sherborn, because the overall sentiment of the school committee members, staff, students, other community members was that they would all be successful at Dover-Sherborn as a superintendent. Instead, the determination was who did we think would have the greatest success or greatest likelihood of success at Dover-Sherborn. Unfortunately, presently, that general sense of excitement, widespread sense of excitement amongst school committee members, staff, other community members just does not exist. And for me to be a yes with regard to any of the finalists, I need to feel that excitement within myself, and I need to feel and hear that excitement among our staff, students, and other community members. And I'm sorry to say, I just don't feel that within our community. Instead, I feel a sense of apprehension that our school committees will pursue a finalist who will not be successful at Dover-Sherborn. And given my own observations and the feedback of many community members, I don't believe that prolonging the search process could change the overall sentiment. Now, I do want to highlight that I have not discussed any specific non-positive comments out of the chair's request to maintain respect for the individual finalists during this open meeting. And I understand this request, but at the same time, I feel like this is really a one-sided deliberation that's really discussing only half the picture with respect to each discussed candidate. And that concerns me a great deal. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone else have, did you go first? And then I'm gonna, we're gonna speak in support of candidates.
Yeah, can I would say one other thing, which is I feel like this search, let me put it this way. My bet is that everyone, all of the 36 people on this call are a bit depressed and anxious, not about the search, but about the pandemic. And I feel as though it's even more difficult in this type of an environment to connect. And so I'm probably, again, completely out of order, Brooke, and I apologize greatly, and I don't mean it that way. But my suggestion is that we at least, that other people take the more, have the opportunity for more exploration of Dr. Enriquez, if that's a possibility.
Mark, sorry, Mark, and then Kate, okay?
Thanks. Thank you. And I must say, I've wavered back and forth between Dr. Enriquez and Mr. Gosselin because I see them both as actually good options. I have not done prior superintendent searches before, so I can't compare the excitement of this round to previous rounds, but I can certainly agree with Judy's statement that it's very hard to see individuals clearly in this environment. And we knew that would be a challenge going into it. The question on my mind when thinking of the two candidates that are still at the end of it kind of equal in my view is who can grow into this position. And if we have proper support through mentoring, I believe either one actually could. They've demonstrated real strengths in their current positions. And so I had a tough decision purely because I see strengths in both. And I agree with everything that's been stated about Dr. Enriquez. So I'd like to go a little bit and talk about Mr. Gosselin. And I'm sorry, I don't have such well-prepared notes, but I got a sense through our public interviews with Mr. Gosselin that he was kind of an inspiring leader in that he stated wanting to make Dover-Sherborn one of the best places to work in as funny as it sounds through, magazine Best Places to Work, but it seems he cares about his job and he wants to spread that passion and interest and investment. I love the fact that he ate lunch with 6 kids daily, and that was his routine roundabout to get a buzz on what's going on in the district and to collaborate really from the ground up and to build leaders at the same time. He spoke of being a servant leader, and I know Dr. Enriquez did as well. I think they do live this passion throughout their careers. And as far as clear communication, I agree with Maggie. It would be great to have some kind of on-the-spot writing sample to get a sense on how they're responding in the moment. But I must say, with Mr. Gosselin's interview package, it stood out to me as one that was well put together. And when he spoke during those, responding to our questions, in many cases, he had very clear answers where he could speak from experience. Even if he hadn't been a superintendent, he could speak from things that he's done on the lines of equity in Pennsylvania, whole child education in just in decisions he's made with respect to the budget and supporting student programs. And I believe also with respect to collaborative leadership, essentially kind of calling upon his background in coaching and the idea of identifying the skills that each member brings to the community and then letting them run with that, not being a micromanager. Thank you.
Ooh, sorry, the dog just made an awful noise. Is anybody, are there any more advocates to speak in support of a candidate at this time? I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak if there are any additional comments. Anyone have anything to add? quite a quiet bunch. Okay. This is where I'm walking into uncharted territory. Sorry about the dog. Just ignore it. Okay, so we have advocates for some of our candidates, and it's my understanding that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, those better versed in this, that my understanding is that NASDAQ has stated that without a majority, we do not proceed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. So I guess there's two, I apologize to be so inarticulate, by the way. There's kind of, I assume two paths is either finding more information or continuing the search. Is that everyone's understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Now, help me here, Anne, I'm putting you on the spot. What do I call for discussion on either of those?
Well, it's up to you, but I can tell you that you do not vote not to continue. You do not vote to not continue. You only vote to continue.
You do not vote not to continue.
Does that make sense? Therefore, you conclude if there's not an interest to continue, then you do not. But you do not ask to vote for who does not want to continue.
This is like a who's on first kind of thing.
If I could make a suggestion, this may or may not be helpful, but perhaps there are three options and there are three finalists, but perhaps the first pass is inviting motions with respect to each individual finalist as to whether, not whether or not, but invite a motion to continue with that finalist.
My understanding
Are we actually
is it,
voting on this? Maggie, do you know?
yeah, I at this point, I don't think we are.
No, the way it was explained was you have to have a majority to push forward. So the way I'm seeing it now, there were 4 in favor of Dr. Enrique to continue on and 1 for Mr. Goslin. And we have 15 members here. And with that, as you can see, for each candidate, there is not a majority.
Well, actually, I thought this was just people who wanted to express support for a candidate that spoke up, but that there are some of us in the group who have a preference, but just didn't feel the need to make a statement. So I don't want the assumption to be that for those who didn't speak, don't have an opinion.
And I
Correct.
think that
Or have an adverse opinion?
Right.
we're
Right.
not doing the adverse opinion. We're doing in support of, not the converse.
But the
Right.
statement in
Well,
itself
but that's
you were not required to make a statement.
Yes, you can be in favor of moving forward without having spoken up and made a statement. My bet is, and I don't want to put words in Lynn's mouth, but from what she said, she might be someone who is in favor of continuing forward with the process with Dr. Enriquez, but she just didn't want to make a speech about it. And Lynn, I'm sorry if I'm, please.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I'm at.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah.
I see Amanda with her hand up.
I just had a question, and that is, what would continuing with a candidate look like? Because I think one of the hard things for me in this process is that my only experience of these people has been on Zoom and reading what other people have said in feedback forms and talking to references and reading materials that the candidate submitted. So, you know, given the environment we're in, I'm just not sure what that would look like. So, and I'd like to know that before we vote one way or another.
Oh, do you want to take that in?
Maggie can take it. She had her hand up first if she wants.
Yeah, she's down there. Maggie.
Okay. Well, I think we as the school committee determine what we need to get more information. So for instance, on all three candidates, I mean, I almost put my hand up again to say, I also have a lot of really enthusiastic things about Mr. Gosselin. So if you like, I am happy to tell you all about those too, but I just like picked one because I was trying to, you know, share the air. But regardless, you know, we can decide what more information we need. So one of the fears for me is that I have an advantage with Mr. Gosselin and and Dr. Enriquez that other people don't have, because I was able to spend time in person with her, which many of us were not. So one of the things that we could choose to do is inviting people that we feel we haven't had enough, that Zoom was not enough, that one interview plus listening in on a parent thing was not enough. We could invite them to join us again if they were interested in returning here. And that's on the table for all three candidates if people feel that that would help them gain information. I, for one, would like to see writing samples from actually all three of them. Definitely from Mr. Gosselin and Dr. Enriquez.
Can I ask a question, Maggie? Can we, if they were willing to come back, could we have, are we allowed to have some sort of in-person interviews?
That there are limits, I believe. I mean, I'm not the expert on this, Anne is, but there are limits to numbers of people that can be in a place at a time. But I defer to Anne. And really, I'm not in a leadership capacity in this meeting, so I hesitate to speak at all. So
I think we need to determine who wants the candidate, you know, what the appetites for the candidates to come back. I mean, we have two choices, right?
Well, but Brooke, Amanda was asking a question about what it would look like, and Anne, I think, has some more information.
Okay.
So I have gotten cleared that if we wanted to, we could in fact meet with candidates in person, preferably on a Wednesday. So in 2 days would be ideal, just because it's easier to schedule space in school. And we would just have to make sure that we did not have a quorum from each of the committees. So you could have two and three. So we could have several meetings if people wanted to meet with them in person. That would be possible. And you could do an hour meeting in a room on campus if that's what people decided that they wanted to do. That is a possibility. Does that help answer your question, Amanda?
Oh, Amanda, you want to go?
It does, thank you. And is there any possibility of site visits at all in this environment? I just feel like it's a really big decision that we're tasked with, and given the information that I have, you know, based on everything that I've looked through, I don't feel ready to make a decision about anyone.
We could do we can't go and visit physically, especially out of state, but we could do a Zoom visit with people. What we were thinking, and part of that, and that's certainly a possibility. The thought is, how much more helpful would that be than talking to somebody on the phone? So that's up to the committee as a whole to decide if that would be valuable.
Thank you.
And Amanda, just to respond to your point, not with an answer, but maybe more with my own kind of considerations and observations, that you know, it's possible for one or more of us that the compromised situation will just be wholly unsatisfactory, and that, you know, one or more of us might not be able to get the information that's necessary through a suboptimal process.
Yes, and
So Michael, I thank you for saying that. I agree with you that may be the case for some people. Just as a heads up for folks, that there are districts that have made the decision completely virtual with absolutely no on-campus component. So, and I'm not saying that we need to, I'm just sort of throwing out there that some people figured out, so we could even talk to districts that have done that to see if they figured out ways that worked or things that worked for them.
is there anyone else? Lynn, do you want to chime in?
I just found my raise hand feature. I don't know how to take it down though. Does someone else take it down?
I don't see it actually. So
No? Oh, okay. Well then, perfect. Can we talk through what it would look like if we don't? If we vote to not proceed with the search, is that the right terminology?
No, we're still in the search.
Yeah. But if we decided not to move forward, I guess with these candidates, is that that's one of the options we're talking through?
Yes. Anne might want to jump in. I feel like we need to look at these candidates in their totality and decide whether they're our candidate before, you know, we move to the next step. We know there are other options, but I guess, Lynn, I'm just cautious of whether those should influence what happens at this point. Does that make sense? I mean, there's interim, well, Anne can explain, you know, some of the, but in my mind, I'm trying to really segregate the two processes. And I don't know if that's helpful for you, but I feel like we need to see if one of these candidates is the next superintendent, and then we move into what happens next.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
okay.
I mean, it makes perfect sense, and I think it's absolutely right to approach it that way. It's just, it's hard to,
I know
whatever we do today is gonna have an implication. Well, anyway, I get it.
But we shouldn't make our decision based on that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm trying to stay in my lane. Okay, does anybody else want to say anything? Oh, I see a Kate. There she is.
I apologize because one of my dogs is barking in the background. I didn't prepare anything, but I do want to say I was among the group who did not get to meet anyone in person. And I do fully understand how meeting someone in person can be very different from meeting them over Zoom. So I guess I'm not at all opposed to being able to meet with one of the candidates again in person if we decide to move that way. I'm not sure what that would gain, but aside from time on our end and their end, I don't see a whole lot to lose.
Yeah, and oh God, sorry, Brooke.
That's okay. You go and then Michael can go after you.
Yeah, I hear you, Kate. And if we decide tonight to continue the process with one or more people, we're not deciding that we're going to hire that person. We're just deciding, and I frankly think, because of my experience, for me at least, because I find Zoom to be so inadequate, and I found in person to be really helpful, that it might be helpful, and it was helpful both ways for me in this process in terms of in person with the candidates. Okay. And it's just in a bad environment during a pandemic, it just gives, for those who want, a little more information or a lot more information.
Michael, then Colleen.
Yeah, Kate, one of my concerns about timing and elongating the process is that we, unless there's a selection made, and even if there's a selection made out of the current pool of finalists, we are likely competing with a number of other districts for either interim or permanent superintendents. I was actually, I just did a kind of a quick search and shared with the group the number of superintendent searches that are in process now in Massachusetts. And I came up, and it wasn't an exhaustive search, but I came up with, including the Lennox search, where they had extended an offer to Mark Goslin, 18 that are underway, which I think is a pretty high number going on concurrently. Now, would we be competing with all of those? I would hope not. But I do feel a sense of urgency to kind of move along and to also have the ability to, I know we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but we have some pretty weighty stuff that's, you know, still with us and around the corner with planning for next year. I'm just concerned that the process continues on without getting appreciable benefit.
How are you listening?
Oh, I just clicked the link.
Colleen, sorry.
Thank you. I wanted to just speak in support of gathering more information. I believe that there's a level of uncertainty that was evident in the response forms as well from the staff and the administration. There's the unsure was pretty heavily weighted. I think we do have some, I feel pretty strongly about two of the candidates in terms of finding out more information, and I would like more time with them, either face-to-face on Zoom or in person. I would prefer in person, but I realize these are two candidates from out of state. So that's not easily arranged, or, you know, it is a sacrifice. There is a timing issue. You know, we may lose one or more of these candidates to other offers, so that it may make its decision for us on some level, but I think it is worth the time for this committee to have some more certainty, either in up or down votes on these. And they are two very strong candidates. I know that there wasn't the strongest feedback from the staff and the administration, and I wonder if more time with them would be helpful as well. You know, Michael, thank you for compiling those responses, quantifying them. That was helpful to see that there's a fair amount of uncertainty. Not sure if this might be one that's getting away, and that is one thing that I'm concerned about is that these might be two very strong candidates for our district at this time, and they might get away just because of the nature of the search has been so sort of I don't know, just so. It feels so minimal, like we've gotten so little compared to what we would have had in previous years in terms of face time with them and face-to-face time. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Colleen. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to chime in if they want to. Bueller, anyone? No?
I guess one observation is it's 18 other districts that are going through the same process with the same restrictions that we are. So some are making decisions based on the limitations of this process, and some aren't, but we're not alone.
Yeah, and Lynn, just from doing some of that research, some are going right to interim, and they're kind of putting off so they're doing a kind of a formal interim search without kicking off the permanent search. And just, I'm only speculating that they're, putting off for a better environment, hopefully, knock wood, next year.
Yeah, but we thought, I assume, and Anne can speak to this better than I can because Anne did a lot more thinking than I did, which usually happens. Thank you for laughing. We thought about that, Michael, and we decided to do the search. So let's actually fully do the search, and let's not get scared by what other people are doing and feel like, oh my God, we've got to move on to interim or move on to something else. Let's do it right, which is, and be sure of what we're doing.
Okay, I feel the need to respond. I believe we've done the search, and what was set out in the plan was all accomplished. We actually did everything that was set out in the plan, with the proper exception that Maggie points out, that there are a couple of reference checks that are still pending. But there is a subjective opinion on what is proper, and I would argue that we have done everything we set out to do in the initial plan.
I appreciate that, Michael, but I do think when we sat down tonight, we did have three possible outcomes to this process, and one of those was that we, folks might feel that they need more information on a candidate. So that might be in addition to what we initially asked, or such and so forth. But so I think maybe I'm saying yes, but, or yes, and to your comment. So does anyone else, I want to give everyone the opportunity to speak, to contribute. Sarah, you're up.
Well, I just wanted to say that I am very proud of the candidate profile that we prepared. I really do believe that it is a true reflection of what we are seeking in our next leader, and that it reflects a real collaborative effort that brought together varying viewpoints from the community and melded those into a really admirable set of qualities that we want to see in our next superintendent. I have to confess, I am feeling very uncertain and not confident enough that the candidates that we have reviewed represent the entirety of what we are seeking in our next superintendent as set out in that candidate profile. I'm not sure whether those uncertainties can be addressed by further meetings, but I suppose that that's the decision that is before us, and that we're faced with. All in all, I would have hoped to see at this point in the process more consensus and a sort of broader base of support emerge surrounding a candidate. And I just don't believe that we've seen that type of consensus. It's hard to parse out how much of that is due to the nature of the pandemic on the search versus the candidates themselves.
Or say it again. Is there anyone who wants to chime in? What I'm hearing have us say, and please, I'm only one of 15, so is that there is a desire to find out more information on at least one candidate, or more than one candidate, or at least two. Sorry, Maggie, let me just finish my thought. Or at least to poll or vote whether there is a desire. Is that?
But is that what the vote is? I'm just trying to understand. I thought the vote was, are we moving, are we changing I don't know. I've never done this process. So is the vote the
Look
initial?
how good I am at it, Nancy.
No, I know, but Brooke, you're doing a great job. So but is the vote kind of moving? Are we continuing with the process? I guess are we continuing with the search? I guess that was what we're voting on.
Anne?
Thanks. We don't have to vote to continue the process. We have to vote to either vote to enter negotiations into someone. We can just decide based on the sense of the committee that we would like to, that there's enough interest in continuing the process that makes sense, or not. But the only vote that we'd be taking would be to enter into negotiations with a candidate.
So Anne, I guess my question is, how do we get the sense of the committee if that's not a vote?
Well, it's up to, you've heard, it's up to you and Brooke and Maggie. You've heard what people have said, and it's up to you to decide if you like, we need to have at least 8 people who speak up and are in favor of continuing, or you can say, you know what, there's enough interest. You know, if there's doesn't have to be a groundswell, but if there's enough interest, that's enough for us. You could decide we need to have everybody interested if we're going to continue. That's really up to you all to decide, and to decide what voices you want to listen to, or what's important for you in this part of the process.
Angie, did you want to respond to that, or?
So, I mean, I'm in a quandary about that, because without kind of like because as I stated before, then we have with Lynn, I would say we have 5, maybe 6 people interested in going to move it a little bit further along. And then it seems like the rest of us are saying at this point, we pause this part of the search, continue on with the search. It's not to say that these candidates may not wish to keep their applications in the pool as we continue on the journey. But at this moment, there's not a strong enough interest to say yes at the moment. And that's where I am. And, you know, if I'm wrong, I apologize for misconstruing it, but that's how I've read the situation. So given that, based on, you know, no one from my committee has pushed that we want to go forward in this. So I would say the Sherborn School Committee is not on that path.
Lynn?
So it seems to me at this point, because we spent the time to have people present on what they view the various candidates' attributes are, it seems like it's now a time to sort of straw poll to find out who's interested in getting more information, because, you know, hopefully what people have presented has had some impact on their thought process. Maybe not, because that's the world we're in now. We dig in and we stay there. But I think the next step it seems to me the step in the process is, having listened to the presentations, let's now sort of take a poll around what people feel we should be doing next. Because even though I didn't say anything, it didn't mean I didn't have a view of how we should proceed. And well, that's it.
Anne, and then Michael, or Anne first?
No, Michael could go if he wants. It's all right.
He's ceding the floor.
Okay. I was just going to say, yeah, I think the key though is that who's interested, the sense of the committee would be, as sort of restating what Lynn said, if people are interested in continuing to gather more information, then we can, if that is what people are interested in, we can decide as a committee what that looks like, or decide as a subcommittee what that looks like. If there's not, then it's once again up to the chairs, who I assume have talked about this and figured this out, how you want to proceed after that.
Oh. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong objection with the notion of procedure by fiat. And that's kind of what I feel like the chair's determining what the sentiment of the 15 school committee members are. We did come into tonight with the procedural expectation that we have a deliberation and come to some decision. And what Brooke outlined in the beginning of the meeting, we could have with respect to each candidate, decision A, decision B, or decision C. And I feel pretty strongly that the next step in this process is to decide by vote with respect to each candidate whether we are going to proceed down A, B, or C path. I don't think this is a chair determination on the fly.
The only chair determination would be whether they're not determining whether the search ends for sure, and they wouldn't determine whether we take someone, we enter into negotiations with someone. I understand what you're saying. I just want to be very careful that we don't vote. We only vote in favor of. We don't want to vote. It's really just not, it's not nice. It's basically, it's just not what's done. You don't vote against candidates. That's just not a nice way to handle it. And we can handle it differently. That's all I'm trying to do with the process.
So are you suggesting, Anne, then that we sort of take a poll and see for each candidate, do we need more information from them and then and see what happens and then go from there? Or is that, I mean, is that the first next step?
Brooke?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're at a point, I think, where we need to make some decisions, and everyone has kind of shared their information there. It does seem to be, some desire to find out more information about what, I don't know, one or two of the candidates. I think we need to see, we were, Angie, if you instructed by NASDAQ today that was a majority position. It wasn't like one or two or three people could ask for more information. So that from a procedural standpoint is what my understanding.
That's what the direction was today from NASDAQ. So, and that's what I'm trying to follow is the process as the process goes.
But I just have a question. Are we changing the process? So, and maybe it's completely fine, instead of saying we're voting to semantically go down the positive path versus now we're saying we're going to kick it, we're going to vote because we want more information. So we're really not making a decision. So we're changing the vote, I guess, on the fly tonight. And is that okay? I mean, is that a normal thing in this type of process to happen? Or are we coming to the table to say we're moving forward with the, do you understand what I'm saying? I feel like we're changing what we're straw voting on or not voting on or consensus voting on, whatever. I don't know what, because I guess we're not voting. So there's a lot of confusion in the process for me. And I don't know if it shouldn't be that, to me, it's not, I think it should be a little bit more crystal clear than what's laid out tonight, in my opinion.
My sense is, having not done this before, that there is a desire amongst some folks, at least, to find out more information about some of these candidates, but not and Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, but not a majority to vote in a candidate, to enter negotiations with a candidate at this particular point in time. So that is, I guess, what I want to see where it falls out, who, and if we want to continue with further information gathering for a candidate. And also if there are folks that feel like that, you know, we're done and that's the end of their process. So I don't know exactly how to parse that out, and I would welcome any insight on that, but that's my feeling of where we are at this particular point.
So if I'm understanding on the issue of whether we want to get more information, if we, in order for this group to decide on any of the candidates to obtain more information, we need to have a majority. Is that what Angie was saying?
That is my understanding, yes.
So should we just proceed with that first? Because I mean, if we can't, and yeah, I mean, if that's the holdup, let's do that. And then I don't know, vote on candidates. Because if it ends if we don't have a majority, that ends the process as a practical matter. We're done. And we got to make a decision, right?
Maggie?
I mean, if we're starting that in order to move us along to this evening, I will go on record as saying that I think that we ought to complete the process. For me, because I've had ample time to meet with, you know, the two candidates I'm most interested in person, I would love to see a writing sample from them. I also continue to be concerned that I didn't get a full reference packet for one of the candidates for whom I'm enthusiastic about. So while I've spoken in support of the other candidate, I feel badly if we call this off tonight before having given each candidate the opportunity to have a full thing considered. And maybe that's just me, but I would like to continue. Obviously, I've supported one candidate tonight. I also have the other candidate who others have spoken in favor of, who I think is delightful and curious. And I'm just wishing I had that other piece of the pie, which we don't have as of tonight.
Should we not have had this meeting then tonight?
That was my suggestion.
But wasn't that the suggestion because of the weather?
I think when we spoke earlier today, I don't really want to go into it at this point. We're here. I've shared from the beginning. I don't have completed packet from everybody. I don't have reference calls from somebody. That's important to me. And yeah, there's like a raging snowstorm outside, and I was concerned that as usual in this town, we would run out of power, but you know, I said my rosary and we're cool, so we're good.
So I think the only thing is we do need to proceed with the process. That was what we set out to do. So whether it is to proceed forward or whether we say at this point, we're going to continue the search just, and these candidates can stay in the wheelhouse, but we're going to continue on, that we don't have a strong candidate to go forward at this moment in time. But I feel like we need to come to some kind of an agreement. So if you're saying bring somebody back on Wednesday, you know, if I don't know if people will get here on Wednesday, and at that point, then do you say, then it's done as a process? Go ahead, Anne.
Sorry that I keep piping up. First, I just have to really quickly, I disagree with the characterization that we don't have any strong candidates at the moment. I disagree with that. But that's it's just my opinion. If we continue forward, we would need to complete it ASAP. Ideally have a meeting even as early as Thursday or Friday this week to have a vote. I agree with you, Angie, that it's something, well, and with Michael, it's something we need to wrap up as quickly as possible for a variety of reasons. So that would be, and do I think the candidates could get up here quickly if they wanted to remain in consideration? I think they would do whatever they can to get here as quickly as possible. I don't know, but that's my thinking.
So it strikes me we're not in a position to enter negotiations with a candidate at this particular point in time, and that there is an interest by some people in order to increase their comfort level or to help with their decision-making process to explore at least one or two candidates going forward. So my assumption then is that we now do I guess I keep saying a vote, but it's not, I guess, a technical vote to see where folks' comfort level is with that. So can somebody help me in terms of, do you see that as the next stage in the process?
I'm
mean,
not
I
sure
think-
why it
I
wouldn't
think
be
you're
a
saying-
technical vote.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because I think that's what I was saying is at this point, we need to find out, is there a majority that would support getting more information from the candidates moving forward? And if we don't have a majority, then we're not getting more information and we're making our decision based on what we have now.
Yes, I would like to agree with Lynn. Let's see if we have a majority to get more information on the candidates.
Oh, Megan, do you want to hop? No. Yeah. Sorry, you're muted.
I think the volume's not working.
I think your audio isn't.
Try turning the volume up on your computer itself. And then unmute yourself.
Yeah, I don't, can you hear me now? Oh, gosh, that was weird. I think my speaker was asleep somehow. Anyway, I was just going to say that a number of people have spoken about time being of the essence. And I think that that's important for a number of reasons here. If we're going to put this out to bring people back for more information again, do we want to put some kind of timeline against that part of this vote?
Oh, go ahead, Anne, because I know you have the timing in your.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that we can certainly put a date for when we want to meet again. Because we know that we have to get that on the calendar anyway. So we actually couldn't do, it would have, like the earliest we could meet is Thursday. But I don't think we can put a timeline on like, we need them to come up a specific day in case that doesn't work. And I don't know logistically, because from out of state, you have to get a COVID test too. So we have to figure out how that all works. And I don't quite know the logistics of that. We could say as quickly as possible. And we could also say if we wanted to, with a final decision prior to, we could say like the middle of next week, which would give us more than enough time and we could have the goal of having it done at the end of this week. But we don't need to put that into a vote. We can just discuss that.
Amanda?
So one thing that I've been weighing really heavily as part of this decision is the feedback from our community. And we have the feedback forms. And while there are positives mentioned about each candidate, there's no, I think Michael talked about, there's no sort of overwhelming groundswell of support for any single one. And I'm just wondering if we bring candidates back, we will get the chance to maybe talk with them more. But what about the rest of our community?
I think community support is really important, but ultimately it's our hire. And given, had we been able to have parent groups and they would have gotten to meet different times, would be a different situation. I don't think that's a realistic thing to do, right? Have parent groups of any sort right now. That makes sense, yeah.
So do we want to, Brooke, do we want to just sort of have a straw poll of, do we want to continue with each of the candidates for a short period of time?
For a short period. Oh, you mean what makes sense? Like,
Continue them in the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, procedurally, if someone could tell me, it seems like Lynn and Michael are talking about an actual vote, and I wasn't my understanding that we needed to do that. Oh, okay. Okay. So,
okay.
Super Bowl opening night gone virtual. Bucks quarterback Tom Brady talks about
please mute. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So my understanding of what is going to happen now is we will do a straw poll with the entire 15 in terms of who wants to continue. What's the legal term?
Process.
So, okay, so we'll just do a straw poll about whether to continue, and then we'll decide the logistics later on how to continue.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I think, right? And then, yeah, but we're missing, oh, here she is. Okay. Do you want to call it, Angie?
Well, do we do it vote by vote, or do we just raise our hands? Michael, for a straw, wouldn't we just raise hands, or? No, I mean, since it's a straw poll, we don't have to record the vote, right?
Right, so we can probably just raise hands.
That's what I'm thinking. I think it's just.
Anne, Maggie, what do you guys?
Yeah,
Yep.
if you can see everybody. Part of the thing is, as long as somebody can see all the members, I can't see them all on this one screen because we have 3 screens going. So as long as somebody can, okay.
I think
Are there
15
of us?
We're all on the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all on the first screen, so there are no other screens I can look.
Oh, all right, Maggie, did you want to say something else?
No, that was it. I just, when we were talking about just raising hands, I was like, I have no idea who's on the screen.
So I will ask for indication, I guess, who would like to continue with fact-finding, information finding with Dr. Henriquez. Please put up your hand. Wait, just wait for me, because I'm. So y'all, it's 7. Can you help me? 7 out of 15.
We're
Okay.
14 now, aren't we? No.
Am I right?
Yep, no, we're 15.
Okay. And then for Mr. Goslin, the same question. Out of 15. Okay. All right. So our understanding is that that is not a majority to proceed with that discovery. Is that correct, Angie?
That's what I was told today. You were told as well by Carolyn. So, Anne, do you have any clarification from NESDAQ?
Not what I was told, but you guys spoke today and it's your meeting, so I'm going with what you said.
And to be clear, this is not to not proceed with the candidacy. It's just not to get more information.
No, I mean, if that's a, yes, it is to continue the candidate's path, I guess. So does that make sense?
We'll continue the search at a later date.
Don't we have to, you know what, never mind.
Because we're not, right, because we're just saying we want more time to get more information on a candidate. But by not wanting more information from any of the other candidates, it doesn't mean that the candidacy is over. It just means we're voting. There's not enough people to support pursuing more information on the other candidates.
So wouldn't that mean we could proceed with a vote tonight?
I'm sorry, I'm not following that.
Okay, so as a practical matter, like if I were to walk it through, I want more information on Dr. Enriquez so that I can decide among the 3 candidates that we have. So in the end, I have all the information in front of me that I need to make an informed decision about all 3 candidates. So I'm assuming that by voting this way, by voting, the decision of whether to obtain more information on a candidate is just that. It's not saying we are no longer interested in these other candidates. Like for Mr. Goslin, if we're saying, if there's not a majority to proceed with obtaining more information on Mr. Gosling, that doesn't mean we're not interested in his candidacy at all. We're just saying we don't need or want more information at this point.
In which case you could, Lynn, then you could proceed to move to vote for a particular candidate to, to extend an offer tonight.
Yes, that's what I understand too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just,
Yeah.
while I recognize that we don't have a majority who needs more information, I guess it concerns me to have some significant number of us who say if we had more information, we'd be able to make an informed vote. And yet we're gonna, I mean, ostensibly these folks say without the more information, I can't make an informed vote. I think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that it looks like how we're headed. And I, for many reasons, think that that's an unfortunate way for this group to decide to go down.
But I guess, again, from even past experiences, what are the ground rules? I feel like we're not like, is it majority? Last time when we brought the other people, if one person was curious, we could have brought someone back to see them live. I didn't know if that was that the true ground rule? I don't know. So, or do we just kind of, as a committee, make these up on the fly?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, and I haven't been part of a superintendent search either, but there is no specific ground rule because it's a hiring decision and you do what you got to do to get the information you need. This one is particularly complex because we got 16 people that need to go along on this ride together. And, so I wish that decisions like this were formulaic, but they're not. They can't be, especially in this case with 16 people. And, but I highly doubt that there is a specific prescribed process other than ensuring that we are acting in accordance with open meeting laws and following corporate governance principles.
I just feel like the guardrails aren't even there in some, I'm having trouble following this whole chain and figuring out like what's next or what are we voting for? Is there majority? It's a vote or a straw poll. I'm just saying as a school committee member, I'm kind of lost in this process. And I know that it is a complex decision, but there's still, when you're hiring someone, there are still parameters. I mean, I heard like we don't have enough information on one, but we don't on the other. I just feel this could be a little bit, Judy, I see your hand. I'll let you speak in 1 second. I just feel like it could be a little bit cleaner or a little bit more procedural. Because I thought there's so many laws in Massachusetts, we have to do this and that. That's all. I just feel like I'm a little bit, anyway, I think
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. And I'm sorry I was raising my hand. I'm bad at that. I'm like, but I don't disagree with you, but I think that Lynn's point is important, which is the reason that we're having this via a public Zoom is because of the open meeting law. And Anne, correct me if I'm wrong, but that in some sense doesn't change that this is a hiring decision. So there's nothing that's prescribed with regard to how we go through the process up to the point at which we vote on whether we're going to hire someone. Does that make sense? So that we can do whatever we want, except that, you know, in order to hire someone, I assume that we need to have the Union 50 vote on that.
Right, well, that's it. The Union 50/RSC vote there, that is prescribed, but everything up to that, as you mentioned, Judy, is not.
And Judy, if I could add to that, because I think we can do what we want, but I think what's important in that is what we want as school committee members, and that it's not and that's really the point that I'm trying to drive, is that this is a decision of school committee members. It's not a decision of 1 or 2 or 3.
Kate?
Yeah, I want to echo a little bit of what Nancy said. And first, I want to say thank you to the people who have spent a tremendous amount of time on this subcommittee, and especially this week, speaking with all of us and figuring out how to proceed. I am, however, still feeling kind of lost in this moment of knowing where we're going. And I was part of the last search, and for just different reasons, it was a different process, and we were not in the middle of a pandemic. You know, one question I have is, maybe do we want to flip this and say, if there are 7 of 15 of us who are interested in learning more about a candidate, is there any reason, aside from, I recognize it's not a majority technically, is there any reason why we wouldn't explore that? Do other people feel so strongly that we wouldn't have an opportunity to meet someone again in person?
Sarah, go ahead.
I would just say that, you know, I gather there's some question of whether NESDEC's guidance was majority versus not. I don't think it's for NESDEC to decide. I think it's for us to decide. And while I personally am not sure that additional meetings with these candidates or additional information would put me in a better position to make a vote, I don't feel good about denying that opportunity to so many of my colleagues.
Brooke, I have a question, or Anne or somebody. Can we make it so that we could all meet with then these people that are coming back? Because, and so that maybe they need to be here for 2 days. You know, I don't know how that will work because of parameters, I don't know. So I think that would be the only ask, is if that is part of it. And also we should try to make it available to some in the community as well, because I looked at all of the data that I had, and when it was broken down, I think that would be a fair assessment. So can that be done as well? We have the remainder of the week or even the weekend. So what could we do to make that happen?
Anne, go ahead.
I just want to quickly, thanks Angie for asking those questions. I just want to reiterate though, that while I do believe that it's important to have public input and the community input, and I obviously truly value the input of the administrators and teachers as well. The administrators had a chance to meet with them in person. So I think maybe they wouldn't feel so badly. They would be the ones I'd most question. But it's really not practical for us during a pandemic to have members of the community sort of file through. Even if we could do it in a quote unquote in groups that would be acceptable, I would also feel badly about exposing members, the candidates themselves to potentially 100 different people in a room. But so I think, though, you are right that there is a way that we can, and the intent would always has always been, if we brought them back, that we'd have an opportunity for all members of the school committee to meet them. We have to see what that looked like. And if we do not want it to have to be in public, it would have to be in small, non-quorum groups. The reason that we didn't have the initial meeting, the school committee meeting in person, was because the Board of Health suggested that we stick with the governor's guideline at that point in time for size of groups. And because we had such a big school committee, and by the time then we got camera and figure out how to make it work so it's accessible to everybody, that got a little bit squirrely. I don't know if those numbers have been changed, so we'd have to go back and ask them if that's a possibility. But if the numbers have not changed, then we'd still probably have to do it in at least two, well, actually, if we keep it not quorum, in 3 groups.
I think the numbers have been upped. So I think that, and I would encourage you to tell them to expect to spend a night, so that perhaps then we could make sure we, do allow for anyone who would like to speak with them to then speak with them. Amanda, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess my concern is if we bring them back and we can't get more feedback from the entire community, I guess it brings me back to, is this the time to be doing this search? Because I don't know that, I think we're all in different ways asking for sort of a more robust process. And I think the process we've gone through has been a process that has been full of integrity. I think we've done a lot of good work. I applaud the people who started this early on and thank them for doing all the groundwork to get us to where we started as a full group. But I guess I'm not sure about the process and the timing given the circumstances at this moment.
Thank you. And I think that's a good point. That's because I do think that's one of our stumbling blocks.
Okay, so in the interest of moving this forward, 7 of 15 is close to half. I would, for the sake, and Angie, tell me if you agree, for the sake of a couple days and the comfort level of some of my colleagues, I think that if that gets them to a place where they feel they can make a more informed decision for Dr. Enriquez, I would advocate for that opportunity to happen. And then we're really just, moving the process a little bit. Anne can tell us how much, but moving the process down a little bit and giving people a comfort level when they go to make a decision. Angie?
I think that's doable. I mean, hopefully it's not too inconvenient to our candidates. Are we only bringing back one, or are we doing both? Mark?
Well, this is where I agree with Amanda, and I think we can get some more information without disrupting the candidates week. Like, I'm not convinced that I need another site visit to gain the information that would help me out. I respect that we're on a tight timeline. I feel like if we're asking them to come up again, it's just adding more of an imperfect system, adding more onto it. I don't think we'll be much clearer after that. However, what Maggie said, getting the writing samples and full reference packets, that kind of information, which can be sent digitally, is meaningful to me.
So Mark, you're advocating that they would not need to travel necessarily?
Yes, I think we could meet again Thursday night with more information and we could close this conversation, frankly. But I mean, personally, I'm also ready tonight, but I know I'm in the vast minority with that statement.
I don't know if we need to opine on in-person versus Zoom at this point.
Yeah, it's up to you guys. We can ask that. Yeah, we can discuss that later if we need to. We can ask those who've requested more information if they have a preference, if that seems to make sense. But at this point, I think that I don't know, it's been a long evening and I don't know that we've moved the bar all that far, unfortunately. But I do appreciate, I just want to say I really appreciate the conversations that we've had tonight and that people have been honest and open about what they're thinking about and that we've processed this together. I think that's good. So thank you.
Maggie?
Did I say something?
Oh, no, you just took your thing off.
Oh, it was an accident.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I am not totally sure how to proceed. I think we have, I guess, do we agree that we want to continue the process with Dr. Enriquez? Even though it's, slightly under the majority? Would that help people with their decision making? All right, I don't know. Is there anything else that we need to cover at this point?
Well, I want to be clear if we're proceeding with getting more information on Dr. Enriquez, because some of us want to see this, that after that, we will still be having 3 candidates to consider. Because if this decision to proceed to get more information from Dr. Enriquez is a decision to not proceed at all with the other 2 candidates, then I don't want more information on Dr. Enriquez, I guess. Like, I'll make my decision based on what I have now. Like, I don't want my need for more information on one candidate to eliminate other candidates. I just want to make sure I'm not, is that what's happening? Or am I misunderstanding?
Maggie?
I mean, I think I said from the beginning, I still, we had reference calls on all the other candidates and I was hoping, I find those a very valuable thing. I mean, I don't know who's doing them and where the notes are or what the story is, but I mean, I'm happy to try and do them or whatever, but that's important to me. I think
I did them.
Okay.
And I thought they were
sorry.
on. Yeah, I did them. Leslie was doing some.
Okay. Sorry,
and-
I didn't mean to be like.
Oh no, well, it was one of
I
us.
did one too, and the people that I was able to speak with on Mark were only able to speak today at 3, and I have a 3-year-old and 2 other kids home all day, so I'm gonna be able to type that up. And then the other person can't speak until I think it's Thursday, and then the other person never responded to me. So
Okay. Well, that's
And mine were typed up, and I thought they were on a shared document that everyone had, and they weren't, so they didn't get anywhere.
okay. No worries. I mean, I just feel like I always try to consider all the things.
Yeah.
I get worried when there's not things to read. That's all.
All right, and can you, because you've done this before, so tell me what the next process. I'm inclined to say that we will revisit all of the candidates on Thursday, because it sounds like there's still some discussion to happen.
So we're not acting on precedent. So if that's the will of the committee, then that's what we do.
So can I ask a question? So what are we going to do between now and the next time we come back together in order to have more information? Because clearly it seems like that's what is needed here.
Well, it sounds like there's some outstanding information that hasn't been included.
But we're not voting, or not voting, but we're not deciding to move forward with any additional engagement at this point. It's just reviewing the information that we have, correct?
I mean, my thought that, or I don't know how it came up tonight, that perhaps candidates would make themselves available for Zoom conversations or whatever. I just think that when I hear folks say things like, I wish the process could be more robust, I wish we had more time to interact with the candidates, all I got to see of the candidate was the 45-minute Zoom, and some folks observed the parent thing, and that's not enough information for me to decide, therefore I feel like we need to bust the search. I feel like as the members of this committee, if that's where people stand, it's incumbent on them to do whatever they can do before we, I mean, I think that there's, you know, if we don't continue with the search, I think that there's some idea that that's like better. And I guess as somebody who's lived in this school district and where we lived previously with interim superintendents, I think that that comes at a cost, because it's a cost of loss. I mean, we have a wonderful leadership team in this school district right now. But part of what makes people like staying in a school district is having, you know, a functional leadership team, you know, with the functional, like a whole thing. And so my fear is that a year or 2 years of an interim costs not just possible stability of leadership, because you don't know if the leader is going to be somebody that everybody likes or gets along with, and your choice of interim leaders is limited, but also forward momentum. So we're not going to do a strategic plan probably with an interim superintendent, and that's like a couple years. And like for me personally, and for some of us on this call, like we'll be like history, but a lot of you guys have little kids, and the people we represent have young children, and 1 or 2 years of lost momentum, that's a cost. And maybe for many of us on this call, like that's okay, like our choices don't work for us. For me, because I have more than one choice, I think is an awesome choice. It makes me sad. And I'm also sad because I feel like I've been less than enthusiastic, although I think there's many people on this call that would say that's not so. But the reason I haven't been like yay ha to everybody in town about superintendents is that like there's like serious stuff going on in my life that makes it impossible for me to go rouse up the troops about how awesome these people are. Like I just don't have it in me. So that's what makes me sad when we say things like there's not a lot of enthusiasm about it, because it's, anyway, I'm done.
Okay, Mark, and then Anne, I'm going to ask you to jump in because you have done this process before, and I need help on how we can button it up for this evening. Go ahead, Mark.
We can basically move to Anne. I just wholeheartedly agree with Maggie. And I think a lot of this, we've viewed the candidates, and we've had conversations from our desk in our rooms alone, like home office, instead of a typical year when you get to basically be at the live show together. And it's a hugely different experience. And we're trying to make meaning from it. I'm ready to go because I think we have great candidate options still. I've said that before.
And I just want to say one thing. Growing up in a global company, this is how I hired people, was through a screen. So I have, you know, seeing how, I mean, literally this is, I mean, sometimes meeting people maybe at the very end. So I mean, for me, I have a comfort level, maybe no one else does, but of interviewing, watching, learning, and, you know, reviewing the recorded sessions. And so anyway, I just think it's not the best system, but for, 20 plus years, this is how a lot of interviews were being done around the world.
Yes, Anne?
So I think we need to go back to where we started, Brooke, and say the first thing is there interest in, I can't remember exactly what the order was and what you said, but is there interest in voting to offer or enter negotiations with a candidate? So you do that first, and if there's not, then you go to the second thing. Is there interest in continuing on? And I think that we've decided with finding more information about, I believe we're saying all three candidates. You can decide if that's a 1 or 2 or 3. That's up to you. And then if that's, yeah,
All three.
does that
Okay.
work?
Yeah, so you want me to go back to the front and say, of the things that we are covering this evening. Sorry, can you say it again? Sorry.
The first thing that you asked was, is there an interest in, are there people who have enough information to make a vote?
Yes.
Tonight? Is there so people who would like to proceed with making a vote to enter into negotiations with the single candidate this evening?
And do I do it by candidate?
No, you just do like a general.
Okay.
Because my guess is well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone feel, or by vote do I do it, or does anyone feel? Oh, by hand. Does anyone feel they're ready to move a candidate forward tonight, or enter to negotiations with a candidate tonight? Okay, then what do I do?
Now you go to the second one.
Do people want further information?
Right, understanding that we will get right. So further information, which is at this point we're saying is not knocking anybody out.
Right.
It's further information, and we can figure out the details of what that means. Understanding that then we will reconvene
later,
and we'll post for Thursday and Friday, probably both, until we can figure it out.
Okay. And okay, show of hands then, who would want further information? Just keep your hands up for a sec. Okay. And then third, I'm assuming would be who wants to, or is it just those two? You're looking at me funny.
Yeah, I think it's just it's those two, because it looked like to me, I'm not good with the counting, but I think there were 8. So that would be a majority.
For the further information.
For further information. And so that's what we will do. We will plan to reconvene Thursday or Friday. I will set up both, because we have to just make sure so we can post.
Okay.
And we'll see what we can do. And if people have thoughts about what they want specifically, what they need specifically from candidates, and we'll go with asking for a writing sample. Yes?
Okay.
Okay, and we'll get sorry, we quickly, Sarah, and we'll make sure that we get all the references posted where everybody can see them.
I sent some references to the chairs. So tell me how you would like the references. I have them as for all except for the ones from Leslie and Lynn. I have them as a PDF document, and I assumed
those have been sent out to the members.
Okay.
Everyone has them. That was a fine way to do it.
Okay, so do you want me to do the same with the ones that Leslie and Lynn are doing?
Yes, please.
And Leslie, if you need help, I'm happy. I completely get where you're coming from, and I'm happy to also help out with any of those if you need it. Because I have time.
Thank you, Judy. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay, so with that as our plan, I think, oh, Sarah, sorry.
Sorry, I know that we've been at this for a long time already this evening, and we're looking at further meetings this week, but is it worth spending a few minutes trying to get a collective, idea of what the additional information looks like so that expectations are aligned and that we have our next steps plotted?
Well, I mean, I think that Anne, you can speak to that, I guess, but I think we're waiting for outstanding information and then any additional information that, am I right, and that someone might want, then would get funneled to you.
I know, because she offered, is that Dr. Enriquez is willing to come up. She's said, I'll hop in my car anytime. So if there's any interest in visiting her in person, and we'll ask the same of the other candidates if they would like to, and we'll see if there's an appetite. For that, we'll look at, on the way I'll test for appetite is through schedule. I'll offer a schedule, create a schedule and sort of say, when can you do it? And if you're not interested, just don't put your name down. And if you're interested and can't fit in the schedule, then let me know and we'll see what we can reschedule. If we can reschedule a little bit.
So if people want to go, but they can't make the times you offer, just reach out to you directly and we'll see if they can.
Yeah, but we'll try to swing things a little bit. Does that sound reasonable?
Amanda has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Amanda.
I just have a question. So given the COVID restrictions, I don't think it's not realistic that happens before Thursday or Friday, right? Or am I mischaracterizing that?
Unless I believe that there's been quarantine happening.
Okay.
In the thought that perhaps it may be something that would come up. It's my understanding, but I have to double check.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that they can get a test fairly quickly these days. The last I saw that was the turnaround now is about a day and a half.
AFC is 3 hours, 2 hours.
Okay, so perfect. And so we can, yeah, that's not an issue then.
Okay, so I think we're done for this evening. Is that other folks understanding? Do we need to poll? We just can
I
say.
think you probably have unanimous consent, Brooke.
Yeah, okay. All right.
One thing we all agree on.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right, thank you.
Good night.